December 7th, 1941. It began as just another sleepy Sunday morning on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The tropical sun was climbing into a clear blue sky, casting a peaceful glow over the island of Oahu. Sailors were waking up, some preparing for church services, others for a day of leisure. The mighty battleships of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, the pride of the nation, sat moored in neat rows along Battleship Row, their gray hulls gleaming. Unbeknownst to them, this tranquil scene was the prelude to an event that would shatter American innocence and plunge a hesitant nation into the cauldron of the Second World War. Over the horizon, an immense Japanese naval force, having sailed thousands of miles across the Pacific in complete radio silence, was preparing to unleash a meticulously planned and devastatingly effective surprise attack. This was the day that President Franklin D. Roosevelt would famously declare, a date which will live in infamy, a day that forever altered the course of the 20th century. The attack on Pearl Harbor was not a random act of aggression, but the culmination of years of escalating tensions, a desperate gamble by an ambitious empire to secure its dominance in Asia and the Pacific. The roots of the conflict stretched back for more than a decade, deeply entangled in Japan's imperial ambitions and the United States' opposition to them. Since the 1930s, the Empire of Japan had been aggressively expanding its influence across East Asia. In 1931, it invaded Manchuria, establishing a puppet state. By 1937, it had launched a full-scale invasion of China, committing horrific atrocities like the Nanking Massacre. The United States, along with other Western powers, condemned these actions, but was hesitant to become directly involved. American foreign policy was still dominated by an isolationist sentiment, a deep-seated desire to avoid entanglement in foreign wars after the traumatic experience of World War I. However, as Japan's aggression continued and its alliance with Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy solidified with the Tripartite Pact in 1940, Washington's stance began to harden. President Roosevelt saw the growing Axis power as a direct threat to American interests and democratic values worldwide. The United States responded not with military force, but with economic pressure. America was Japan's primary supplier of vital industrial resources, most critically, oil. In 1940, the Roosevelt administration began to impose a series of escalating embargoes on scrap metal, steel, and aviation fuel. The final decisive blow came in July 1941. In response to Japan's occupation of French Indochina, the United States, alongside Great Britain and the Netherlands, imposed a total oil embargo. This action was catastrophic for Japan. The Japanese military machine was entirely dependent on imported oil. Without it, their navy would be stranded and their war effort in China would grind to a halt. Faced with this economic strangulation, Japan's leaders saw two choices: capitulate to American demands and withdraw from their conquered territories, a politically impossible humiliation, or seize the resource-rich colonies of Southeast Asia, particularly the Dutch East Indies, with their vast oil fields. They chose the latter. However, they knew that such a move would inevitably mean war with the United States, as the Philippines, a U.S. territory, lay directly in the path of their southward expansion. Convinced that a protracted war with the industrial might of the United States was unwinnable, Japanese military planners, led by the brilliant and audacious Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, conceived a radical plan. They would not wait for America to strike first. Instead, they would deliver a single crippling knockout blow to the U.S. Pacific Fleet at its main base in Pearl Harbor. The objective was clear: destroy America's battleships and aircraft carriers, demoralize the American public, and buy Japan the crucial time, an estimated 6 months to a year, to conquer Southeast Asia, secure its resources, and fortify a defensive perimeter. Yamamoto gambled that, after such a devastating initial defeat, a war-weary and isolationist America would lack the political will to fight a long and bloody war across the Pacific, and would be forced to negotiate a peace that recognized Japan's new Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. It was a daring, high-stakes strategy born of desperation and a profound underestimation of American resolve. While diplomatic talks continued in Washington, D.C., in reality, the die had been cast. In late November 1941, the Japanese attack fleet, the Kido Butai Ao, secretly departed from Japan and began its clandestine journey toward Hawaii. The attack was executed with stunning precision and ferocity. Under the command of Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, the Japanese fleet, centered on 6 aircraft carriers, arrived at its launch point 230 miles north of Oahu. At 6 a.m., the first wave of 183 aircraft, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, horizontal bombers, and fighters took off. The lead Japanese pilots, using a Honolulu radio station's music broadcasts as a navigational beacon, found the island shrouded in morning clouds. But at 7:48 a.m. Hawaiian time, the clouds parted, revealing the American fleet below, a perfect target. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, leader of the air attack, broadcast the infamous coded message, "Tora, Tora, Tora! Tiger, Tiger, Tiger!" signaling that complete surprise had been achieved. The American forces on Oahu were utterly unprepared. Although radar operators on the northern tip of the island had detected the incoming flight of planes, they were dismissed by an inexperienced officer as a scheduled flight of American B-17 bombers arriving from the mainland. The chaos and destruction that followed were absolute. The first Japanese planes targeted the airfields, strafing and bombing the neatly parked American aircraft wingtip to wingtip, preventing any effective air defense from getting off the ground. Simultaneously, torpedo bombers descended upon Battleship Row, the shallow waters of the harbor, thought to be a natural defense against aerial torpedoes, proved no obstacle, as the Japanese had ingeniously fitted their torpedoes with special wooden fins. The USS Arizona was struck by an armor-piercing bomb that penetrated its forward magazine, triggering a cataclysmic explosion that instantly killed 197 crewmen, nearly half the total casualties of the day. The battleship sank in minutes, its burning wreck becoming an eternal tomb and a symbol of the attack. The USS Oklahoma was hit by multiple torpedoes and capsized so quickly that hundreds of men were trapped inside its hull. The USS West Virginia, USS California, and USS Nevada were all sunk or heavily damaged. In less than 2 hours, a second wave of 171 Japanese aircraft struck, continuing the devastation and targeting remaining ships and facilities. The ferocity was overwhelming. The air was filled with the roar of planes, the thunder of explosions, the shriek of twisting metal, and the smoke of burning oil and ships. By the time the last Japanese plane departed around 9:45 a.m., the heart of the U.S. Pacific Fleet was a smoldering ruin. The losses were staggering. 2,403 Americans were killed, including 68 civilians, and 178 were wounded. 18 ships, including all 8 battleships present, were sunk or damaged. Nearly 188 aircraft were destroyed, and another 159 were damaged. In contrast, Japanese losses were incredibly light, just 29 aircraft, 5 midget submarines, and 64 servicemen. From a purely military perspective, the attack was a tactical masterpiece, a textbook example of a successful surprise assault. However, Admiral Yamamoto's gamble had failed in 2 critical strategic respects. Firstly, the Japanese planes missed the Pacific Fleet's 3 aircraft carriers, the USS Enterprise, USS Lexington, and USS Saratoga, which were all at sea on missions. In the new age of naval warfare, carriers, not battleships, were the true capital ships, and their survival would prove decisive in the months to come. Secondly, the attack failed to destroy the base's crucial infrastructure, including its oil storage tanks, repair facilities, and submarine base, all of which would be vital for the American war effort. But the greatest Japanese miscalculation was not tactical, but psychological. The attack on Pearl Harbor did not demoralize the American public, it galvanized them. The shock and outrage at the unprovoked and dastardly attack, as Roosevelt called it, instantly shattered the nation's isolationist sentiment. The debate was over. A country divided on the question of war became fiercely united overnight. On December 8th, President Roosevelt addressed a joint session of Congress, delivering his iconic Day of Infamy speech. Within an hour, Congress voted to declare war on Japan with only a single dissenting vote. 3 days later, Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, declared war on the United States, and America was formally embroiled in the global conflict. The sleeping giant, as Admiral Yamamoto had reportedly feared, had been awoken and filled with a terrible resolve. The attack that was designed to keep America out of the war had ensured its full and vengeful entry, ultimately sealing the fate of the Japanese Empire. The memory of Pearl Harbor became a powerful rallying cry, fueling the American war effort and the determination to achieve unconditional victory, a path that would lead through the fiery battles of Midway, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, and culminate in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, bringing the most destructive war in human history to its end.